Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today's topic are the Kurgans and how they should be potentially represented in Total War Warhammer 3. So without further ado, let's begin. Despite the fact that Total War Warhammer 3 at the time of recording this video has not yet been announced, and we're still not aware on its possible location and story, the general thought by the fanbase, myself included, is that the game will focus around the eastern portion of the Warhammer fantasy world. This obviously makes sense as the rest of the world, barring the northern and southern Chaos Wastes of course, have already been implemented. And the majority of missing races and factions still not implemented into the Total War Warhammer series are those commonly found in the eastern reaches of the Warhammer world. One such race are the Kurgans, a human faction very commonly associated with the forces of chaos. Now, at first glance, people might believe that the Kurgans themselves would be a reskin of the forces of Norsca. A common mistake. However, the Kurgans and the Norsi are two completely different cultures of people. The Kurgan style of living and warfare, while very similar to the Norsi, does also have distinct differences. We'll be getting into their lore in just a moment, but the main reason I wanted to point this out is if the third game is based on the eastern reaches of the map, the Kurgan tribes would most likely be featured, as they are known to border the lands of the ogres and the chaos dwarfs, and it would be a massive shame if they were just another Norscan faction or Norscan reskin. With that being said, let's look at small excerpts of their lore to really understand who the Kurgans are. The Kurgans are a race of mighty, nomadic, copper-skinned horse warriors who dwell under the shadow of chaos in the vast eastern steppes that border the Chaos Wastes. They are a people of mystery and fear, a savage race that rides such fleet steeds as to allow them to fly across the land as fast as birds. The best way to describe them physically is from this direct quote. The Kurgan are human, at least in the sense they have the proper number of limbs, a head resting on a neck between two shoulders, and walk upright, but they are quite unlike other Old Worlders in appearance. The Kurgan have a swarthy complexion, with raven dark hair and tanned, almost brown skin, with black, ever so slightly slanted eyes. They have large frames towering over other men, with bodies that are naturally muscular and powerful. They walk with an easy grace, fluid in motion, resembling the jungle cats of the Southlands in poise and stance. Even the females are strongly built with their severe mane and dangerous attitudes. What is very obvious here is that the Kurgans were inspired by early Mongols and Hun hordes. And due to the reference of its women at the end of the quote, it can be assumed that women do take a more active approach when it comes to the battlefield. But let's continue. The Kurgans are from the eastern steppes, which are massive plains with seemingly endless stretches of dry, treeless grassland, which lie beyond the great mountain range known as the Mountains of Morn. They are bordered by the freezing waste to the north, a great desert to the south, and by the mighty lands of Cathay to the far east. But it is important to note that the Kurgan do not recognize no borders nor boundaries. They travel where they will, and there are indeed very few who would dare to oppose them. The Kurgan live in tribal families like the Norsi do, but these are not settled towns or villages, but rather traveling groups that wander the vastness of the steppes and the wastes with their livestock. Yes, the Kurgan would be a Horde faction, and I know that might have set off a bunch of alarm bells to people, but it can be assumed that by the time that the Kurgans get implemented, if they get implemented of course, that a proper Horde rework would already be in place for the third and final game of the series, considering that most likely the Ogre Kingdoms will also be a Horde faction, so they'd have to completely rework the Horde system before their implementation. Or else nobody would want to play Ogres as the Horde system is, well, quite boring. So now that we know that the Kurgans themselves would be a Horde faction, what would a Kurgan army list more or less look like? For basic forms of infantry, the Kurgan make use of many slaves, which are normally tattooed with warpstone ink in an effort to make them mutate and lose their previous loyalties. Kurgan slaves are not treated as badly as people would think. Kurgan slaves are treated much better than, say for example, Dark Elf slaves or even Norsi slaves. Those who find themselves enslaved by the Kurgan are normally clothed and fed rather well in an effort to keep them healthy. Because of this, they are also expected to fight. Those slaves who prove themselves under the eyes of the Kurgan are awarded more freedoms and greater status, and those with continued success can throw off their shackles of slavery and become full members of the tribe. The Kurgan do not care about racial groupings, rather they see all potential slaves as members of their tribe should they prove themselves, so long as they embrace their culture and dedicate themselves to the dark gods. It's actually rather interesting that a force that is so destructive is also the most accepting of other races. Then, in the more elite form of infantry, you'd expect to see some sort of Kurgan champion and Kurgan berserkers. Direct influence could be taken from the Norse roster for this, as this is just something to flesh out the roster a little bit. Instead, the main majority of units available to the Kurgan should be in the form of mounted cavalry. Think of this as the evil version of Bretonnia. There should be many different forms of cavalry units. Some basic examples would be your standard horse archer, axe throwers, maybe even spearmen. This would be for a basic corps, which is fast and very good for skirmishing. And obviously, then you would also have an elite form of cavalry too, more than likely a heavily armoured variant of the archers, spearmen, axe throwers, with maybe even some great weapon wielders too. Naturally, just like the Norskins did, the Kurgans can take 1 or 2 units from the Warriors of Chaos roster to further tie them to the Warriors of Chaos. More than likely, this would be the Chaos Knights as to further strengthen the cavalry focus of the army. And lastly, it's very unlikely that the Kurgans would make much use of big monsters, seeing as they are a nomadic and fast-moving race. Something akin to a giant and so on would only slow them down. At the very least, I would expect them to have access to the following: Chaos Warhounds to act as war machine hunters, Manticores as mounts for lords, and maybe even a unit of Dark Pegasi riders to further reinforce this evil style of Bretonnian playstyle. Women should also be featured within the Kurgan armies, as it is known in Kurgan culture that women are quite highly respected. Not only powerful warriors in their own right, but they are the ones that pick their own mates, and they are the ones that bring new warriors into this world. So because of this, women are highly respected, and often take an active role within the battlefield. This could either be represented as having mixed units, for example male and female warriors mixed freely to provide visual distinction within units, or as their own separate units themselves. With this, they could even flesh out the roster even more, so this might probably be the best way to go. While there is little to no information regarding Kurgan warfare and Kurgan units, it is important to note that obviously Norska and the Vampire Coast themselves were basically fleshed out from nothing. Should Games Workshop and Creative Assembly be interested in creating a Kurgan faction with unique units, playstyle and so on, the Kurgans themselves have the potential to be a very unique Chaos faction when comparing it to all of those that have already been released and those that are still to be released themselves. My only fear is that if they do get implemented, that they'll somehow be lumped in with Norska, which would not really be fair considering that they are two very distinct cultures and should be represented as such. More unique races means more money for Creative Assembly and Games Workshop, so let's hope they think about that. Soon enough we'll release a proper faction focus on this race, something a lot more in depth with legendary lords, possible mechanics and so on. But until then, what do you think about the Kurgans and their possible inclusion into the Total War Warhammer series? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various different social media links such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Using our special link and also the special code, which is also in the description below, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A special thank you to Bertsche and Gibraltar LUSC for subscribing to us at our fame level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule and VSVasan for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you guys enough. The money earned from Patreon is going directly back into the channel, slowly upgrading little bits and bobs, just trying to get to a higher level of content for you guys. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. The support has been insane lately, and honestly we can't be more than excited. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.